I'm very present, I'm extrovert, I'm loud, but you can't be as effective being more subtle, listening, and being do everything via empathy. So I believe everybody has it in them to be a leader.
All right, Next Gen fam, welcome back to Mentor Momentum. We have an international superstar joining us today, all the way from Berlin. He's an absolute beast at sales, marketing, customer success, you name it, he's done it. And he's currently serving as the interim co-CEO and COO of one of the best CRM companies on the planet, Pipedrive. I might be a little biased. It's one of the apps that I use every single day, literally day in and day out. It has its own place on my phone. It's not even in a folder. So, I'm definitely biased, but I can't wait to dive in. You guys are in for an absolute treat. So I'm going to shut up. We're going to get right into it. Michael, thank you so much for joining us here on Mentor Momentum.
Thanks very much for having me. I mean, what an introduction. I've never in my whole life been introduced like that, or the company. So I'm flattered and honored to be part of the show. And come on, let's get right at it.
Let's get right into it, man. I want to start right away with something that I think is really intriguing. On your LinkedIn, you acknowledge your position of being a full-time dad. So you took some time off, it looks like, and had a child. Congratulations. But you took a little sabbatical before kind of going back to Pipedrive, and it truly is so special to see, because I think not a lot of people are talking about this, acknowledging this, thinking this way. But as a generation of young entrepreneurs that you're talking to, how are you being able to balance that work-life mix, and ensuring that you can lead a company like Pipedrive and balance that family time as well?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm doing it well. You have to ask my kids. It's 3 of them, basically. They're 6, 8, and 10 years old, and they have no comprehension of what I actually do in my day job. To be very honest, I lived I lived this classical model. I earn the money, and my ex-wife sort of takes care of the kids, and that sort of derailed the moment I learned that there's somebody else, and I'm all of a sudden more or less alone with the kids for a while at least. And I had to learn the hard way to step up and take care of the care work that was very comfortably outsourced to my ex-wife. And now I had to do all the work myself, and I knew I had to quit my job and learn it, and be a real dad and full-time dad, and do everything that's needed to keep a household together. And that was a very painful learning, I can tell you that. But it was probably one of the best experiences in my life. So what I can tell people out there is obviously, communicate with your partner with whom you have children, make sure everybody's happy. And there is no division of labor. The division is the division is horizontally, not vertically. You can't say like one is earning money, the other one is taking care of the kids. You have to do it 50-50 on all ends. Basically, dentist appointment for the kids is as important as sort of getting that another pitch deck out to customer X or Y. So as soon as you realize that, you will automatically reprioritize a couple of things in your life, and I think you'll have a healthy relationship and be a good dad. But for me, it's I had to have this hard cut in my life to learn it. And I'm very grateful. It was very, very painful, but I'm grateful to have had that experience. So that's the only way to do it, if you ask me.
Thank you for sharing that, man. It's so interesting. It seems like you almost took this approach to it that most people would take, like starting a new job, where, you're like, all right, I had to learn, which I think most people don't think about it that way. Most people are like, yeah, you just kind of do it. But I think it seems like the way you do one thing in life is like the way you're doing everything in life.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I felt like, I just knew, like, I always wanted to have a nest or a home, right? So I was appreciating that it's there, but I also knew I wasn't contributing much myself. So, and I have 3 sons, right? So it's natural to go swimming and go play soccer, etc. But that's just one part of life. So who's baking the cake? Who's drawing the paintings? Who's, again, doing all the care work about like doctor's appointments in school, talking to the teacher? So what I did is then when I had to step up, is like, I bought books on how to bake cakes, and I learned on the go and on the fly with my son. So I screwed up many meals and I screwed up everything basically for a while. And they kept telling me, it's like, mom does it much better than you do, which is, if you go, like, if you're being sort of dumped, it's really the last thing you want to hear from the 3 people who remained in your life. But it was really, really good feedback. So and I learned, and we huddled through, and at the end of the tunnel, there was a silver lining, and it was not a train approaching you. That was a good thing. It was really, a good future.
Michael, you're awesome, man. I don't know many people that could be like, I don't know what I would do if I heard like, hey, you stick at this, man. But thanks for continuing to go. One thing I want to dive into is, we talk a lot here about mistakes and learning from failures, and whether it's in your personal life or your career. Is there a moment that you failed and maybe a lesson that you learned from that our next generation audience can take away?
Again, I mean, I shared my personal story about the divorce. I think that's probably the biggest loss in my personal life. Professionally, the one thing I always look back to, I was running a company previously called Spark Networks. We ran premium online dating sites, Christian Mingle, J-Day, J-Swipe, Elite Singles, and stuff like that. So some may have heard of them. Anyway, so we had multiple platforms that it was running on. We wanted to have this great project, everything into one platform. Like, every startup out there has heard it. We've all been in those meeting rooms where it was promised it takes 8 months. And then afterwards, we have the fanciest tech stack. We get the best developers, everything. We can iterate 5 tests a week. Well, so here's what happened. And I was a hardcore believer it can be done. And I ignored every single warning sign. My particularly sort of highest ranking lieutenant, Annika, she was running product. Or I was nominally running product, but she was actually running product. And Maria, both in the product team, kept coming back in good faith and say, Michael, listen, this milestone wasn't reached, this milestone wasn't reached, the hiring doesn't go in for months. And I ignored it because I was so biased that it can be done. And I just have to punch hard enough, then it will happen. That I effectively burned through really a dozen of super capable both product and engineering resources and friends by now. After the fact, we became friends, as well as burning millions of dollars and losing probably 2.5 years of time for the company. And it's while there are many chefs in the kitchen always, but it's very cheap to finger point to other people. I was there, I backed it up, I pushed for it. And it was a massive mistake. And I could have known better. It was not a force majeure event. It was not like, oh, who would have known? Like, yeah, who would have known? Open the freaking email, man. Like you had like 15 emails pointing to the fact that this is not going in the right direction. And I think that's a mess. That was a massive failure. And I'm really, I'm personally sorry to the people involved still.
Yeah. And I think it's so powerful too. I mean, you're saying that, I think that ownership too, taking ownership of it. Most people, like you said, would be pointing at somebody else and saying, oh no, it wasn't me, it was a team effort. But I think taking that ownership and saying that, like, I think it's okay to make mistakes, but being able to listen to the people that are on your team and hear the feedback that they're giving you seems like a really valuable lesson.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. And interesting. And I would have always said, like, still to that point, listen, it's only fact-based, I'm data-driven, blah, blah, blah. Well, in this case, I really wasn't. I mean, that's really the thing about when the bias really kicks in and there's no instance that sort of can correct you. You can derail an entire team effectively. And so you have to own it. There's no way around it. So you either own it or you probably shouldn't try to be a leader.
Absolutely. Taking a step back for a second, I want to go all the way back to the very beginning of your career, coming out of school. You're 20 years old, young Michael. Looking back at that time, what's one piece of advice you would have wanted to give to that version of yourself?
That's a really good question. I mean, I'm turning 39 in 2 days, so like most of your listeners they could be effectively my kids, right? So I have to be careful what I say now. And I don't try to be like, there's always a danger to be cheesy, like to say something like, follow your dreams, listen to your heart. Well, don't listen to your heart. Your heart is not like, your brain is really smart. I'm joking. Listen to your heart. I believe for those of you who endured me now for the last 7-8 minutes, it becomes rather clear. I should have listened more. I should have listened more. And I think to be cocky at the age of 20 is a good thing, because you take risks and you sort of, you believe you can conquer the world. And I think that's great, right? That innate belief is something really good. In my case, I probably did not listen enough. I should have probably taken a step back, shut up once in a while, and truly listen to the people around me, or some select few people, to give me advice and to also sort of get a mirror. How am I working in the respective system I'm currently in. And that I didn't do. I used a lot of heuristics, and I believe that I have the answers to the vast majority of things because I can think them through at the age of 20. Jesus Christ, I really had no had no comprehension what's going to come, but I fully believed I had. So and that was a mistake. I should have listened, and probably I would have learned that I don't have the full picture, and that would have humbled me much earlier in my life. And that being humble is a virtue, I would believe. That is really something. It means you're teachable, and it means you know that you don't have all the answers. And probably at the age of 20, I didn't have that.
That's so powerful to hear, especially from somebody like yourself who's become such an incredible leader in industry, in the space, and at Pipedrive. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and that journey to becoming a leader, and any tips you would give to people like myself or anybody else in this next generation that wants to one day lead a team like you do?
The fun thing is, I think everybody can be a leader irrespective of the title, right? It's the wrong word. Ultimately, it's about that people follow you, right? And every day you come to work and you run a project, or you're part of a project. It is more about that you accept your own responsibility, or figure out who is responsible. If nobody is, you take the responsibility, and you try to create followership by leading the way. And that can be done in multiple ways. I'm very present. I'm extrovert. I'm loud, but you can be as effective being more subtle, listening, and do everything via empathy. So I believe everybody has it in them to be a leader, if they also accept that the price that comes with it. Because the moment you are a leader, you have to accept the responsibility for the people who follow you, the good and the bad stuff. And unfortunately, you more often deal with the bad stuff, meaning somebody needs to leave the organization. Somebody wants a promotion, but you can't give it to that person. And then she says, like, I'm going to leave you, leave the organization, and things like that. So you deal a lot with the problems, not with the happy cases. And that comes with basically after people follow you. What I believe is that it is paramount that you have a few years under your belt where you try to stick around in a certain industry or a certain job to really see the effects of your own decisions. And what I mean by that is, it's very easy. Like we all, you have a 800 GMAT and you went to Stanford, and you will get a really good job.
Yeah.
However, certain things in life, sort of the time you spent on them is the defining KPI, not sort of a singular achievement. So you have to sit around and see that whatever you do to a system, to a decision, comes back after you one way or another. Like my replatforming project, I could have, if I had left 6-12 months down the road, I would have never seen how bad my decision was in the first place. And that ultimately made me a much better leader. So I do believe you need to cover a basis for a few years. And then I think you'll either have this natural drive to go into a more managerial position. And if you don't worry. You're not a better person just because you want to manage other people. Rather the opposite, right? The most interesting people I know actually focus on something content-wise and are super happy by just developing something they're passionate about, versus helping others to develop something they may or may not be super passionate about. But that's just then personal flavor, I'd say.
I love that, man. And I think it's so helpful too, because, as millennials or in the Gen Z, space, you hear all the times like, all right, it's okay, bounce around like you're young. Also, like, don't bounce around. You guys bounce around too much. So I think you're finding this really nice happy medium, which says, hey, you can find a few different things that you're passionate about, but in order to really grow, you need to stay in that space and see the fruits of your labor come to life.
I had a golden rule. I always, so when picking a job, obviously you look at your boss. Yeah, and she needs to be awesome, like because you can only be as good as your boss is, and that's one. And then secondly is like, hey, you pick the option that optimizes for lifetime value, your lifetime value. So it means if somebody offers you 5 or 10K more at the age, even though it's a lot of money at the age of 25, but it doesn't make you more valuable over time, meaning like it opens up more like value is defined by the number of options you have at a certain point in time, in my real option set. So it creates more options. Like going into digital marketing right now will for sure generate more options in 5 to 10 years versus you go into traditional snail mail marketing. Yeah. I'm not saying that's a bad job or anything, but like just, opportunistically, you would go into the digital space because that's growing. But once I took the decision, I set myself a limit. In the beginning, it was 2 years. Afterwards, it was more like towards 5 years to say, listen, the moment I enter, I switch off the little man in my brain or woman in my brain who always nags me like, hey, the grass is greener, grass is greener, grass is greener, because it ain't. It's not greener. Just like you have to silence that person in your head and stick around for those 2 or 3 years. And that served me really well, to not listen or give in when somebody called and say, hey, listen, but this is now the newest fad, or you should start this one, or you should move to this city. It actually served me well to then say, listen, you took a decision, you stand by that decision, you pull through, and after, in this case, 2 years or 3 years, it's fair game. Then you can go, then you reassess where you stand. Did you achieve what you want to achieve? And then you move on and do the next thing. That, at least for me, served me rather well.
It's so powerful and resonating with me as well. I think I look at it, I'm like, that makes so much sense. If you could just shut off that little voice in your head that's like, hey man, you'll have a lot more fun if you like worked here, or like, oh, imagine if you could work here. But if you don't give that time and allow it to manifest itself, then you're going to end up not finding anything.
And it's a thin line, admittedly, right? I mean, if it truly, I read a really interesting Twitter post the other day. It started with quitting is for winners. And it goes on about like, hey, listen, it's actually quite successful trait to have the ability to say, listen, I'm quitting something. And then in the end, it says, quit because it sucks, not because it's hard. Yeah. I think that's a very good advice. Like, don't quit because it's hard. If you have a toxic boss, or if I don't know, you end up selling landmines and you didn't know before, right? So say, okay, that's probably nothing I want to be associated with. I don't want to work there. That's fine, right? Then move on. Don't be dogmatic about it. But on the margin, I'd say I rarely think that the situations or the companies suck that hard that you have to leave after 3-6 months. Like, endure it for a while and then take an informed decision after more time has lapsed.
Absolutely. I need to dive in for a second into, the life habits that you have, because I think you have such an interesting way of thinking that I'm assuming it has to have been developed over something that you're doing in your own personal life. So is there one habit that maybe you have, or something that you do daily that empowers you to be, this incredible leader, human being, and inspiration to all of us?
That's very good. Today, and I was probably the most hardcore WhatsApp user you could, like that, people calling me if I didn't respond 3 a.m. in the morning after 3-4 minutes to send me a message. So that's the level of addiction I had to WhatsApp. I deleted it today. I told it literally today. It's not a fake. I deleted it today. So one of my habits is I deleted Instagram. I deleted Twitter. I am not on Facebook since the last 10 years, which is insane in my line of business, right? So it's really tricky to keep up with digital marketing if you're not, don't understand how a Facebook page looks like, to be honest. So I do believe you have to get all that junk out of your daily routines that simply are empty calories. They're not providing any value to you, nor to the people you seemingly interact with, because it's empty calories. It doesn't mean anything. It's not real contact you're having. And get that out of the way. That's number one. Number two is a natural effect, knock-on effect, is like have real interactions with people, have honest contact with rather few people than a lot of people. And again, my phone book is full, and I love people. I want to learn everything about everyone, but you don't have the time, and you become superficial. You become shallow after a while. And I saw that's why I deleted WhatsApp today. And thirdly, and it sounds so stupid, but good night's sleep, healthy food, and workout, guess what? They make you happier, healthier. And, I know everybody keeps saying that, but trust me, the transformation in the last 2-3 years I made through is so massive. And all the energy comes from just having some really basic healthy habits. So those will be my three. Kill social media, have real contacts, work out, and sleep well.
I love that. I think it's so powerful too. And they're ones that, you definitely hear, but I think it's clear that you're also living it. And I think it's reflective in who you are as a person. You jumped on, first thing you did, you're like, yeah, I'm ready to be here. You're definitely living your truth, man, and making really powerful relationships. Even, our time here, I feel like, has been an example of that to a T.
Thank you very much. I mean, again, thanks for having me on the show. I mean, obviously, I know the podcast. I'm not saying I listen to it every day, but like I did know it when you reached out. I was kind of pumped. I was like, oh, amazing! That I want to, if I can share something that some people find it valuable, even better. So if people find me I don't know, on LinkedIn or anything, share feedback. I'd love to hear your story and what you think about what I said. Good or bad, right? I can take both.
I love that, man. Well, I want to end on one question that dives a little bit into the work that you're doing at Pipedrive right now. And obviously the CRM market is super saturated. It's a tough market to be in, and you guys are standing out constantly from the pack. So what in your mind is able to make you guys thrive in this saturated market, and how can our people learn when they're trying to innovate in similar markets that are, have a lot of big competitive players in it already?
First of all, I would disagree. Like, this market is not saturated. I think there are a lot of competitors out there, great ones. So we respect them. But overall, the level of digitization, and I mean, in the US or North America, Central Europe, it's still in its infancy. Like, I'm not saying it's 0%, but like, there is so much growth over the next 5 to 10 years. And not only people sort of switching to Pipedrive, but a lot of people coming from spreadsheets to a CRM, and most likely Pipedrive, because obviously, as you said, it's the single best one in the entire universe, I would say. But like, switching to a CRM solution. So the market is growing, and it's growing because more people digitize. I think we in our little startup digitalization bubble don't fully acknowledge how far advanced we are in our daily routines versus the general sort of public, or the general, SMEs out there. I think in our case, I have to, like, I'm saying what Pipedrive did. It doesn't mean that I personally contributed to that, right? So we have a rock star founding team. Our CTO, Sergey, is probably the single most knowledgeable person in the SaaS world out there. So whatever I say is on Pipedrive, not my own genius, because I literally just piggybacked on their knowledge. I believe what Pipedrive did really well is that they understood, they had a conviction how sales should be done. That it's all about the deal, that you create a visual pipeline that people can follow what stage the deal is. Yeah. And basically that's how they went into the market 10 years ago, which was, again, quite revolutionary. Right now, I would say, like, listen, okay, it looks a bit like, I don't know, a Trello for sales, the young would say. But in our case, it was a real invention, and combined with a super ease of use. So you don't need a consultant, you don't need anybody, frankly, to get started on Pipedrive and see the value of having your data organized, having a certain structure to your sales process. So I think those two led ultimately to the fact that people love the product, as cheesy as it sounds, and they recommended it to a ton of people. So that just became a self-fulfilling prophecy, which is extremely hard to copy, because truth be told, timing plays a role. 10 years ago, there were no competitors, right? I mean, a few, but not like that, not like now. Not you go now on G2 and say, like, listen, give me the 50 best CRM systems, you pick one. Back then, there was like, hey, we think we need to organize our customer data. There's this tool. Even the word CRM system wasn't that coined in the sense, like, what exact value can you extract, what functionality you expect. I think the market was a different one. So truth be told, there was a timing was right, but then the tool, the conviction that was sold to the market, as well as the ease of use, that cut it for Pipedrive, if you ask me.
I love that. And I think it's so spot on. I think the word conviction too is what's sticking with me, as like being able to know exactly what you guys are standing for and keep pushing towards it. And I know you guys say, you're the sales CRM developed by salespeople for salespeople. And, I think it's so spot on. It's such an incredible tool. And like you said, it's so easy to use that, I'm doing my own plug marketing right now just for you guys.
Thank you. I mean, again, we talk afterwards. You get a Pipedrive t-shirt, obviously, being our biggest ambassador out there. It's much appreciated. Honestly, it's cool. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Michael. Well, as we wrap up at the end of our time here, I want to give it to you for any parting thoughts, any words of wisdom for the next generation, anything that you want to share before we wrap up here.
So, believe it or not, this pandemic will be over one day. And when it is, go out and travel. And I think that is the single best use of your time. Don't do too much air travel, because it's bad for the environment. But overall, I think go outside and find your sort of your inner balance, what you truly want to do in your life. And then the rest, whether you become a mechanic or a carpenter, or you study computational physics in Stanford, it really doesn't matter, to be honest. I think you have a wealth of opportunities ahead of you. You should just be humble enough and acknowledge that it's there, and maybe whine and whinge a little less, if TikTok is down. No, that's a big prejudice but like, hey, go out and enjoy yourselves and meet other people and go travel. I think that's the one thing I would recommend to catch up with the lost time over the last 12 months.
I love it. Well, Michael, thank you so much for all of this and for joining us here on Mentor Momentum. You are truly incredible.
Thank you very much for having me. And again, keep on rocking, guys. I love your show.
That was Mentor Momentum, sharing life and business lessons from incredible leaders. Looking for more momentum? Subscribe to our weekly Momentum newsletter at nextgenhq.com and check out our other podcast, Momentum Audio, on any of your favorite podcast channels. Now that's momentum.